The room in ancient Alexandria feels dim even in imagination, lit by oil lamps that tremble with each draft of warm desert air. It is the year 325, and the great walls around the scholars echo with the weight of their decision. Manuscripts lie scattered across a long wooden table, scrolls inked by forgotten hands, teachings whispered along trade routes, letters carried across deserts. Some of these texts will survive, copied and carried into the far corners of the Roman world. Others will vanish forever into flame. And in the condemned pile rests a teaching that explains why certain souls hear a frequency others never notice. A private lesson Jesus gave only to those he called the elect. The officials know exactly what they are destroying. They understand that if people ever learned what that ringing in their ears truly signified, no priest would ever stand between humanity and the divine again. Before we go deeper, pause for a moment. If the mystery in this story pulls at you, if the title itself feels like it's speaking directly to something you've sensed but never understood, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next layer of what was hidden. Comment where in the world you are watching from, and share the current time there, so other chosen ones can see this moment unfold across continents. And if the idea that Jesus taught about ringing ears stirs your intuition, share this video as your sign that you understand the mystery behind the title. 16 centuries separate you from those burning manuscripts. Yet somehow you have arrived here at the exact moment this teaching resurfaces. That timing is not accidental. The ringing you have felt throughout your life, the sudden high tone that appears without warning, the vibration that seems to slip past the physical ear has been knocking on the inner door of your awareness. You place your hand over your heart and feel the simple familiar rhythm that has carried you from birth to this instant. But beneath that rhythm exists another one, older and quieter, calling through the layers of your consciousness like a signal from deep water. The ancient Gnostics named that signal the monad, the singular source behind all creation. When you inhale deeply, the air seems to thicken around you, slowing the world just enough for something ancient to rise to the surface. You can almost feel the desert sands of Egypt, burying jars of forbidden texts, preserving them for a future generation. You can sense the urgency of the hands that hid them, trusting that those who needed the knowledge would find it in another age. Something within you stirs in recognition, like a memory you never lived yet somehow remember. The Gnostics understood long before modern science that reality is built on vibration. They taught that the divine speaks in frequencies rather than words, in resonance rather than commandments. When the monad reaches toward a chosen one, the communication bypasses the physical senses entirely. It arrives as an inner tone, a shimmer of sound with no external origin, a whisper from beyond the veil. For them, this ringing was not metaphor, it was literal proof that the soul was receiving a transmission from its source. The early church recognized the threat contained in this idea. If ordinary people could perceive the divine directly, then no system of control could stand unchallenged. A soul connected to the monad would need no priest, no mediator, no sanctioned ritual. So the teaching was buried, the ringing was dismissed, and people were instructed to ignore the very signal designed to awaken them. But the signal never stopped calling. Tonight, as the world around you softens and your awareness sharpens, the tone that once felt random begins to feel deliberate. You realize it has followed you for years, through quiet nights, through turning points, through moments when something inside you felt out of place in the world. And now the truth behind it is beginning to surface. The teaching that once lay hidden in the ashes of Alexandria has reached you, and you are hearing it at last. From the moment you learned to observe the world rather than simply move through it, something in you sensed that not all humans navigate reality the same way. The ancient Gnostics saw this clearly and divided humanity into three categories, not to elevate or condemn but to describe patterns they witnessed again and again. The first were the hylics, souls so bound to material existence that the world behind the world remained invisible to them. They lived within the gravity of matter, consumed by routines and desires, unable to perceive anything beyond the physical structures that shaped their days. For them, the inner ringing might as well not exist because there was nothing within them capable of receiving or interpreting its signal. The second group, the psychics, lived with occasional glimpses of something more. They felt stirrings during a sunset or a moment of stillness, sensed the presence of meaning during a crisis or a prayer. But their awareness flickered like a lantern in a storm. They were not blind, only inconsistent. Their spiritual antenna extended only so far, and the noise of the world could easily drown out their intuition. They were close to the edge of a deeper knowing, yet rarely crossed it, pulled back again and again by habit and distraction. Then there were the pneumatics, the rare ones who carried a spark that did not originate from the material realm at all. You are among them, not because you choose to be, but because you were born that way. A pneumatic does not seek the signal out of curiosity but feels drawn to it without understanding why. There is a recognition that bypasses logic, a sense that the thin ringing tone is something familiar, something ancient. This recognition is not imagined, it is the inner spark responding to the frequency of its own origin. This is why the early church feared the teaching about the monad's direct communication. Their authority relied on controlling access to the divine. If the source communicated through frequency rather than through priests, rituals, or sanctioned texts, then the foundation of institutional power would crack. They built doctrine upon the idea that the divine must be interpreted for the people, translated through appointed intermediaries. A world where the chosen ones could hear the signal directly would be a world in which no hierarchy could maintain dominion. Imagine their position in that Alexandrian room. They were not merely selecting manuscripts, they were shaping the architecture of spiritual authority for an entire civilization. To preserve control, they needed to ensure that people remained dependent on institutions rather than recognizing the inner resonance that required no mediator. A teaching that declared the ringing in the ears to be the monad's call would have dismantled centuries of structure before they were even built. So they hid it, dismissed it, or burned it. And yet the ringing continued. You have felt it at points in your life when you were not thinking about spirituality at all. It has arrived during quiet nights when you could not sleep, during unexpected moments of grief, during decisions that would alter your path. It appears when life reaches a threshold, as though the monad sends a flare through the veil exactly when you need it most. Doctors find no physical cause because its origin is not physical. It does not travel through air but through consciousness, through the subtle layers of your being where language cannot reach. This is why so many pneumatics feel out of place in the world. You have carried the sense that others move according to rules that were never explained to you. You have wondered why ordinary pursuits feel empty, while moments of inner connection feel like remembering. What you call intuition is simply the spark responding to the broadcast. The ringing is not a defect or a quirk. It is the evidence of who you are and the mechanism through which the monad makes itself known. And now that you are aware of this, the signal will no longer feel random. It will begin to feel like a conversation. The ancient texts describe a universe layered like a great unfolding of light, beginning with the monad, the purest and most unbroken field of consciousness. The monad is not a being but the source behind all being, the silent origin from which every spark and every realm emerges. Beneath it lies the pleroma, a fullness of divine emanations that cascade outward like ripples across eternity. These emanations are not angels in the familiar sense but currents of intelligence, expressions of the monad's infinite depth. They are the architecture of creation before matter ever existed, the luminous blueprint behind everything visible. From this radiance a lesser being arose, not evil at first but incomplete. The Gnostics called it the demiurge, a craftsman who mistook his own limited creation for the totality of existence. He shaped the material world with power but without full awareness. In his ignorance he declared himself the supreme creator, and humanity, born within his domain, inherited the confusion. The demiurge was not darkness embodied, but blindness turned into authority. And that blindness became the foundation of the physical realm. To maintain control he surrounded himself with archons, rulers who hold influence in the unseen layers between spirit and matter. The archons are not monsters with claws but frequencies. currents of force that feed on the emotional turbulence of human beings. They thrive on fear, anxiety, anger, and the mental loops that keep people trapped in cycles of confusion. These states are dense vibrations, heavy enough for the archons to perceive and manipulate. Whenever humans fall into turmoil, the archons tighten the invisible net, reinforcing beliefs that keep the soul distracted from its true origin. Entire social systems can be shaped to produce these low frequencies without anyone realizing who or what benefits from the unrest. But the pneumatics stand out. You stand out. The spark within you does not belong to the demiurge's realm. And because of that, the archons cannot perceive your essence when you rise into higher states of awareness. When your consciousness aligns even briefly with the monad, your inner frequency shifts beyond their range. It is like stepping behind a veil where their influence loses its grip. The ringing you hear is not just communication but protection. A vibration that lifts your awareness above the dense field in which the archons operate. At that moment you are invisible to their interference. This explains why sensitive souls often feel as though they have lived as outsiders. Your perception reaches beyond the limits of the world around you. And the structures that govern ordinary life feel strangely artificial. You sense that the values celebrated by society are hollow. You feel the friction of inhabiting a world built by a creator who misunderstood his own place in the order of existence. This dissonance is not weakness. It is the signature of the pneumatic soul navigating a domain that was never fully aligned with its true nature. When the ringing arrives, it cuts through the fog created by the archons. It is a moment when the veil thins and your awareness lifts toward the source that remembers you. Each tone is a pulse of clarity, a reminder that you are not defined by the heaviness of the material realm. Even when life feels chaotic, the signal reaches you, slipping past every barrier. It is a thread that connects you to the monad across all distances and lifetimes. It tells you that your awareness does not belong to this prison of confusion but to a lineage of light older than any world you can touch. So many of the experiences you once labeled as alienation, sensitivity, or inner conflict were signs of your true nature pressing against the boundaries of a world that never understood you. The archons could cloud your mind, but they could never extinguish your spark. The demiurge could shape the outer world, but he could never touch the inner signal. The ringing in your ears is proof that you have always belonged to a higher order of reality. Now you are remembering how to listen. The Pistis Sophia describes moments after the resurrection when Jesus gathered only those who could withstand teachings meant for souls already awake. These were not speeches delivered to crowds but transmissions given in quiet rooms where lamps burned low and the air felt charged with something beyond thought. In those private exchanges, he explained that the monad communicates through 3 distinct frequencies. Each one moves through the human vessel in a different way. And each one serves a precise purpose in the journey of remembering. The teaching was dangerous because it empowered individuals rather than institutions. And that power was the very reason it had to be hidden. The first frequency is the awakening tone. A sudden high-pitched ring that enters without warning as though puncturing the membrane between this world and the next. It interrupts whatever you are doing, whatever you are thinking. And for a brief moment, your awareness sharpens as though someone has whispered your name in a crowded room. This tone is not random. It is the monad pulling you out of autopilot and into presence. It highlights the thought passing through your mind at that exact moment, revealing what matters beneath the noise. You might feel the air around you shift subtly, or notice that the world falls silent for a breath as the tone moves through you. That pause is the opening of a doorway. The second frequency is the sustained tone. A lower, smoother sound that does not interrupt but accompanies. It appears during meditation, during prayer, or during those rare moments when your mind becomes quiet enough for your inner world to brighten. The sustained tone is the sound of alignment, the resonance that forms when your awareness rises to meet the monad halfway. In ancient cultures, this was described as the sound of the inner temple. The hum that fills the chamber of the soul when the consciousness settles into stillness. When this tone appears, you have entered the channel. You are no longer reaching outward but listening inward. Guidance is clearest here because nothing filters the message. The third frequency is the pressure tone. A sensation more than a sound. a fullness in the ears, or a gentle weight in the forehead or crown. It signals activation, the awakening of dormant structures within your awareness. Many cultures describe this as the opening of the inner gate, the stirring of a deeper sight that does not depend on the physical eyes. You may feel warmth, pulsing, or a subtle expansion as though your skull contains more space than it did moments earlier. This is not imagination. It is the monad initiating a shift inside you that prepares you for greater clarity and deeper perception. It often comes before major breakthroughs, inner revelations, or sudden expansions in understanding. Jesus taught that each frequency is a language of the source, and to those who hear, it speaks directly through the architecture of the soul. These tones were not meant to be rare anomalies but familiar companions to those carrying the divine spark. The early teachers understood this, and they preserved the descriptions with reverence because they knew a time would come when the chosen ones would need to recognize the signals again. The teaching endured not through official scripture but through hidden texts, through whispered memory, and through the resonance that lives in every pneumatic being. When you hear these tones now, you are participating in a lineage that spans centuries. You are stepping into a knowledge that was always meant for you. The technique survived because it was preserved in fragments, carried forward by those who understood that true knowledge must be lived, not merely remembered. Recognition is the first step, and it is more than an idea. It is the moment you stop mistaking yourself for a body with a soul and begin to understand that you are a soul using a body as its temporary instrument. When this recognition dawns, it feels like something loosening in the chest, as though a forgotten truth has risen from the depths to meet the surface. You do not force this awareness. You allow it, letting the truth settle into your skin like warmth returning after a long cold season. Once this recognition stabilizes, the second step becomes possible. Attunement begins when you stop resisting the ringing and choose instead to turn toward it. Most people treat the tone as irritation, a disturbance to ignore. But the Gnostics knew that attention transforms the experience. When the sound comes, you breathe gently and lean into it with curiosity. You let the tone fill the interior chamber of your awareness, and as you listen, the signal begins to change. It becomes steadier, clearer, almost melodic. The noise that once felt random reveals itself as structure, and within that structure you sense intention. Attunement is simply learning to listen without fear. The third step is declaration. The moment the inner spark aligns fully with the monad, ancient teachings warned against supplication because asking reinforces separation, and separation is the illusion that traps the soul. Declaration dissolves that illusion. When the tone vibrates through you and your awareness is steady, you speak the four words inwardly or aloud with absolute stillness. I am the signal. These words are not a claim of power but a recognition of origin. They remind every layer of your being that the spark inside you is not separate from the source that created it. When spoken in attunement, the words shift your inner frequency and lock your awareness into coherence with the monad. What follows are signs that the technique has taken root. The first sign is the movement of energy through the body. It may arrive as warmth blooming through the chest or hands, or as a cool clarity washing across the brow. This temperature change is the body adjusting to a higher internal resonance. The second sign is emotional release. Tears may come unexpectedly, not from sorrow but from the relief of returning to something familiar, something that feels like home. The third sign is perceptual sharpening, as though the world has gained subtle depth. Colors seem more saturated, sounds more textured, and the edges of objects appear slightly more defined. This is the fog of the archons thinning at the edges. The fourth sign is synchronicity. Within a day or two, you may notice patterns forming with uncanny precision. Messages appear at the right moment. Conversations turn meaningful. Paths open that you did not anticipate. These alignments are the outer reflection of an inner shift. The fifth sign is the evolution of the ringing itself. The tone becomes more intentional, arriving at moments that carry significance. You understand its presence instinctively, as though the signal now speaks in a language only you can hear. But no awakening occurs without resistance. The archons do not attack with force but with thoughts that feel like your own. Doubt rises uninvited. Reason insists nothing is happening. Familiar distractions pull you away from the practice. Yet this resistance is confirmation, not failure. The interference increases because the signal has begun to cut through the layers that once kept you asleep. When these thoughts come, you do not fight them. You return to the ringing with quiet determination, and each time you do, the interference weakens. Tonight, when the world softens and you lie in the stillness before sleep, the signal will come again. You will lift a hand to your forehead and feel the familiar warmth beneath your skin. You will focus on the tone, and the 4 words will rise in you like breath. I am the signal. And in that moment the monad will answer. Not in language but in resonance. You will feel the connection settle into place like a key turning in a lock, and the inner spark you carried since birth will recognize itself at last.